If you didn't watch my Armature 4 or Armature 2 video, well, I guess that's okay, but you should go watch it. This, however, is about the Demco Knives 80-20.5 in 3V with a clip point and digital camo, and of course that shark lock. Now, as somebody on my channel, if you watch those videos, those old videos, I've been a tried and true triad lock fan for very, very many years, and at this point I can actually say I think for EDC tasks I might prefer this locking mechanism. Sometimes when I'm going out, I want a big blade. I want a Formax. And the Formax Scout is a really serious blade. I love this thing. It kind of makes people laugh when I whip it out and use it on something, or to open a letter or whatever it is I'm going to do. But a very trustworthy blade. I like it. I actually genuinely like the feel of it, especially the affordability, and the fact that it comes in, an AUS 10A. Steel is not the worst. It's been generally affordable and very, very reliable, but it does tend to be huge, and it might be bigger than most people are willing to carry. So some days I don't carry that. Sometimes the 80-10 is enough. I really like the 80-10 and Andrew Demko's blades in general. I've been a big fan of them for a while. I did modify this one a little bit for my comfort, my needs, but this is an extremely strong, capable, and just classy knife. I think this one has been probably one of the favorites. When I put this in people's hand, they almost always like it or want it. But I started before that with an Ultimate Hunter, and this one has been used like insane. I think this might be one of my most used folding knives I've ever had in my entire life. I just love it. I think it's so functional, and it's a steel that I really preferred. I've worn it away. What was it? Oh my gosh, I can't even see anymore. Man, I can't remember what that steel was. Oh, it was CTS XHP. I love that steel. This has been a really, really good blade. Fantastic design by Andrew. But even that one sometimes is a little thicker than I want, depending on what I'm wearing, and maybe just more beefy than I need. Less EDC friendly for some outfits, I suppose. And in that case, this is an excellent fit. And to be honest with you, it's not like it's at the bottom of the list. This one has quickly risen to near the top of my everyday carry list. I really, really like this blade a lot. Now, one thing that's really cool about the shark locks in general, when I first started looking at these, I thought maybe this would interfere. I thought this could potentially be a problem spot right here. And it hasn't been. Just ergonomically, functionally, hasn't been a problem spot. And the locking mechanism is absolutely, gosh, I'll say it's the most fidgety and most friendly locking mechanism I've ever used. I like this one a lot. It's very, very cool. Just so easy to manipulate. And Andrew Demko, who has made some cool locking mechanisms, like the triad lock, right? A lock back that has a little bit of a unique difference to it. Blades like this is what excites Andrew Demko. Is he is a creator. He's an engineer. He's someone who, he enjoys the blade. I know that much. He enjoys the blade and the steel and sharpness and toughness and all that, but he is like a lock engineer. This guy knows what he's talking about, and he loves designing things and trying them out and inventing. And that's actually a fundamentally important creative aspect to any company, is somebody who just genuinely enjoys pushing the envelope, doing new things, and has ingenuity. Like, he would score very high on ingenuity in general. And you can tell because this lock, by most people's standards, as far as toughness and friendliness goes for use, it's totally sufficient. I never had complaints like some people might have about lock stiffness, or trouble deep pressing a lock, or being worried about guillotining. I mean, look, it's never been an issue for me. I love the triad lock. And if I hadn't tried this shark lock, I wouldn't know that I could be just as, content with another style. And if anything, I would say I'm more content with it. Now, I think the triad lock is potentially still, one of the strongest and one of the most reliable locks that I've ever used. But as far as ease of use and durability and strength, this shark lock is giving the other one a run for the money, in my opinion. And they're not the same thing. They might be for different purposes. Each knife is designed a little bit differently for tasks or vision from the creator. But any blade with a shark lock, I'm inclined to think is going to be extremely reliable, and I'm going to have a very similar sentiment about these kinds of blades as I did with the triad lock based blades in the past, which I still use and carry very often. But when I can carry a knife that is this small, this easy to deploy, and just fidgety, and super cool, you know, in 3V, yeah, this ends up in my pocket pretty often. All right, looking at that blade profile and the design there, I'm a huge fan of clip points. I've become a fan of the shark point. I have, or the shark foot, I should say. I have 2 shark foots now, so obviously I am a fan. They've done really, really well in both designs, both applications, but when it comes to EDC for me, I could take either one and be happy with it. In the woods, I prefer a clip point. If I'm working with wood in general or crafting, some sort of clip point, spear point is going to be my blade. But in an EDC task, as long as they have sufficient belly, and this one definitely has sufficient belly, I think it's going to do everything I want it to. Just give you an idea of the thinness of the contour. I like that. I think it's sufficiently slicey. The grind line, you can see up here, comes down there, and then you have your secondary edge, or your edge, your secondary grind, the edge there. You have a little bit of a hollowed out piece there where you could get some meat of your finger to stick in there. I don't know if it's weight savings or not, maybe a little bit, little tiny bit of weight savings. Certainly not a reduction in strength on the blade. This is made in Taiwan. If you didn't know that, it's a Taiwanese made blade, and I think it's a very high quality Taiwanese blade. As I previously mentioned, there is some jimping. What's going on right there? And with jimping, most of the time, I don't want it. But on this one, it's done just soft enough and functional. I guess that's the word I should be using. It's functional. It's not so aggressive that it just eats away at your thumb. There's just enough there to give you a little extra something, and it's spaced out properly. Some of them feel a little bit too much like teeth, and they're just harsh on your hand. This one seems good for gloves or with your bare hand, and I just don't see myself having problems with that actually, and so it's kind of winning me over. I should talk about the thumb studs a little bit. So the thumb studs on this don't stick out too far. I think it's the widest point on the knife outside of the pocket clip over the scales. You can see there. And they have some nice pyramid. I'm going to come in a little closer. Okay, you can see there's a little pyramid texture there. And you have a standard or a slotted screw on the other side. Nicely contoured. Nothing sharp or extra aggressive about them actually. But functions really well, and it's really hard to miss with both hands. All right, looking at deployment with a thumb, like I said, it's just real easy. I almost never miss it. Depends how lazy I'm being with my thumb, but it flicks open really, really well. I think I can do it. Yeah, I can do it with my middle finger. I don't advise that because I think there's the risk of riding the blade up with it and getting cut. But it's not difficult to move. This blade moves so easily. It just opens with such little resistance. And somehow it doesn't guillotine either. It closes nicely. So thumb studs do the job. Deployment is great. I have nothing to say other than it's great. I love it. It's easy to use. I think I prefer using the shark lock deployment method. So this little piece right here, if you've never used a shark lock, that ridge right there, which is kind of like a shark fin or whatever, dorsal fin, that piece that sticks up is how I prefer to open it. And it feels a little bit better than like an access lock. So in an access lock, you know, you kind of get your fingers out of the way, you pinch or you pull down, and then deploy and whip it open. This one, I guess I have a similar hand position. So if you're good with an access lock, this shouldn't be that much different. It's pretty much just getting that, getting your finger out of the way, and instead of 2 fingers, you're using 1 finger. My thumb stays on the side. Really easy to open and close in the same position. So I can open it, cut, close again. So I actually like it better than the access lock. I think it's cool. The fact that it sticks up and it has a little bit of jimping on it. Let me come in close again. So the fact that it has, you know, a little jimping on it, grip texture, and that it sticks up in general, I was worried about that at first because I thought it would be obnoxious against my hand, and I was just wrong. I don't really notice it very often. Again, I'm not using this for hard tasks like cutting wood or crafting. Not using it for anything like that. In that case, I probably would notice it because your hand changes position so often on a handle when you're carving. And there are a few positions when you're carving where this area up here matters a lot. But when I'm doing EDC tasks, I just don't notice it. It's not been a problem for me to grab that and flip it open. And the position of my hand, usually I'm over it or I'm past it enough where I don't even notice it. Here's how it stows away in the pocket. So there's a little more there than some knives. I wouldn't call it ultra deep carry. And Demco does have some other pocket clips and designs. This isn't the only one. But if you don't like flashy, they have all blacked out versions, that kind of thing. But sitting down, I still find it pretty easy to get a hold of with everything that I wear. And stows away pretty well. Pretty flat against the pocket. Doesn't seem to take up too much space. I can get my whole hand in there. And I have another item there. I have a little mini Olight flashlight. My backup. And I could have my phone in here or a front pocket wallet, something like that. And this would not interfere, in my opinion, at all. So fidgety. This is the fidgetiest knife I've ever had. And so this material, kind of like a work-based pants, outdoors pants, slips into those pretty well. Hopefully you don't have to deal with the sound of the wind too much, but I have this old broom that can't really broom anymore. I'm going to cut a few strands of this. That's a pretty rugged material. I've only stropped this knife so far. I haven't had to reprofile it. It's no surprise to me. I am a big fan of 3V and the way it performs. Now it's -1 out today. That's why I'm in here and got the wood stove cranking in the background. So it's pretty cold out. And 3V, depending on what kind of hardness you give it, in the cold, some people have thought it to be a little chippy. I don't. I actually think 3V holds up pretty good in the cold. I don't think it's chippy. I'm not sure if that's more the perspective of somebody who's like doing an excessive amount of batoning or something. A lot of chopping with 3V. I'm not looking at it that way. I'm looking at 3V as a slicey material, and it really is a resilient steel. I actually think it's probably more resilient than it gets credit for in functional use and actual like folding blades, even fixed blades of a medium size. But again, I don't do a bunch of chopping, and I don't think I'll start, although it can chop. It did work. Yeah, I don't think I'll be doing a lot of chopping with a 3V blade. It's just not my preference. Touching 3V up normally is something I think a person kind of has to learn how to touch up 3V as far as the stropping angle and how hard you're pressing in and what grits you use. I tend to use, for 3V, as long as I can, I'll use ceramic, and just a touch up on ceramic, which is even more of a honing, and then a light strop. On a couple fixed blades I've done more of a heavy strop without the ceramic, and it's done fine with that. If it comes time to reprofile, because 3V is just a little bit more difficult than some other steels, like like A2, for example. A2 is really easy to do everything with. It's easy to sharpen, it's easy to strop, it's easy to dull to some degree too if it's not hard enough. With this, I tend to use the belts. I like the ceramic belts and a really, really quick touch. I don't spend a lot of time taking away material, and on this particular blade, because I want this to last me a long time, I plan to let it slightly convex at some point. I'm not sure how long it'll take to get there, because this has been, it's been several weeks now. I guess we're on months, unfortunately. Sorry, Demco, it's been a very long time. Yeah, I don't have to reprofile. It seems still pretty good. just stropping, getting it back, and I'm using it a lot. I've cut a lot of cardboard. I've done a lot of prying, unfortunately, with it. I just didn't have the right tools with me. And then just cutting cordage, doing things like this. A little bit of wood. Made some feather sticks earlier today to get the fire started with this. It works just fine for that. All right, there we go. There's a little more something to work with. And I had no trouble slicing through that at all. Previously mentioned, I made some feather sticks with this earlier, and I'm going to go ahead and run just a few down on this. This is not an ideal piece of wood for it, and that's fine. It's what I have. It's what's going to have to work. So that has to count for something with a folding knife. I don't think that's too terrible. You know, the grind, the way that that edge functions, it doesn't bite in too terribly deep into wood. It's not like a Scandi. And in this case, that's a good thing because there's a little more strength behind that edge, but it doesn't prevent me from making feather sticks or doing some of those basics that I need to, and then striking this with a ferro rod and getting that started. Like I actually did just a little bit ago to get the fire started with the same piece of wood, just a few less curls. But obviously does just fine in the minor crafting area. As far as comfort in the hand goes for that kind of thing, I would say it's comfortable for a few minutes at a time with a hard piece of wood like this that I kind of have to really pry into or press against. It's comfortable for a few minutes. The particular hold, I just modify my hold so that I can get kind of a more comfortable purchase on there. It wouldn't be comfortable for really bearing into and working with wood for a long period of time. And again, it's not what it's designed for. Look how thin that contour is. This is a very comfortable EDC, and so I think just pragmatically, it would be wrong to comment too much on the handle comfort for hard woodwork. But for EDC tasks and simple tasks like this, I will take the weight savings, the size in pocket savings, that thinness of profile. I'll trade that off so I can get this done and keep it in my pocket and just not have a really big, bulky, heavy thing hanging in my pocket, which sometimes I don't want. A lot of times I don't care. But sometimes I just want to keep it a little more low profile and get the job done, essentially, which it can do. So being that it's -1, I'm not going to do a huge amount outside with the knife today, but I do have to be able to use it with gloves. And I don't have too much trouble operating this knife with gloves. Unless I get my own hand in the way. That's part of the problem. Ooh, okay, so I can't really get it left-handed very easily, but it's easy enough to do if I don't try to fling it. If I just open it like a normal knife, I can do it left-handed. Right-handed, no problem, shouldn't be an issue. And cardboard cut tests tend to be kind of a staple nowadays of testing, and this knife slips through pretty good. Hopefully you can see that all right. I don't have issues at all with this knife binding up. I haven't yet, and I've cut double thick and triple thick cardboard with this just to reduce material for work. And then at home with some boxes and holiday shopping, I find that it keeps an edge relatively well, and it just doesn't bind up hardly at all on stuff. I think it's the grind and the edge combination. I think that grind affords it the strength that it needs behind the edge so it doesn't dull out quickly. It may not be as thin and slicey as some knives out there, but it keeps the edge longer. And that 3V, it's amazing how sharp it can remain after cutting cardboard so many times. Not really that, but just the weeks of cutting cardboard and just a simple strop right back. It's done really well. So I don't find it to bind up on this kind of stuff. I'll go ahead and cut against the grain here. Pretty much just as easy going against the grain, and it feels like it slips through. Like I got to slow it down because there's so much power there. Good amount of handle to blade ratio, and I think that allows for some power too in the grip. And of course, the fact that I'm wearing gloves, you know, that's something I should comment on. It feels really good with the gloves on. Enough handle there that I can have confidence secure in the hand, and I think I can still operate it just like normal. Back into the pocket. Not difficult to use and easy enough to grab. Another use for an EDC blade that probably test the edge a little more than cardboard does, in my opinion, is zip ties. And not like your cheap zip ties, but the a little bit thicker zip ties that you can get. I would say these are a decent test, and I might have to not cut against this cardboard. Just be careful. Cutting, you know, I don't want to damage this table. Cut against this. So zip ties, you know, they're plastic, but to cut and slice into one like this is different than simply just breaking a zip tie. If you have to do it repeatedly, it definitely tests the edge in different places. And I would say for how strong of a zip tie this is, I'm actually putting in pretty minimal effort. I think it's that edge again. I think that edge is just really built well. We're getting a really good angle. There's enough behind the shoulder, and then it does come down to an acute enough sharpness. Of course, I did hone this again. But that little pop right there just shows you that there is some pressure. It is dividing. It's not going to slice through it like a really thin knife, but it's going to hold the edge a lot longer. In fact, every part of this knife appears to me to still be really, really sharp. And I just don't think it's difficult to punch through this. So that's pretty good. I have to check it out and look a little closer to see if I see any damage. Sometimes, believe it or not, on softer steels or steels that are not as tough or resilient, after doing a push test against this type of zip tie, sometimes I'll look at the blade edge, and each place, you'll notice I tested this part, this part, this part, this part. Sometimes I'll notice a dent in the steel, and that's usually a sign that I just pushed it beyond its hardness, and it can't really handle that. This, however, I do not see any damage whatsoever. I don't see any bends. Good. I don't feel anything. Doesn't feel like it flaked over the edge in any spot. So that's pretty good. It's definitely a tough steel and a tough blade overall. Fairly comfortable to press into that. Not too uncomfortable in the hand either. Taking a look at the handle now. The handle itself, like I said before, it is relatively thin. It's G10, and inside are some liners. It feels, you know, incredibly strong. When I look at the placement of those liners there on the tang or on the handle, it looks like it's reinforced everywhere that you would expect to have stress on a blade. I'm not going to do a baton test on this, but I feel like if I had done a baton test, I think it would pass, and I don't believe that I would be seeing any stress fractures or anything on the G10. It looks like the connection is decent, and we have steel reinforcing what needs to be reinforced to make this a really sturdy knife. But the handle itself does have a couple of, I would call, light finger grooves here. Now, you guys that have watched the channel for a while know that I don't like finger grooves in knives generally. I would rather have something featureless, but it kind of depends what I'm going to do with a knife. If it's something that's going to plunge into material, then I don't mind a guard, and I don't mind something to resist that. If I want to choke up on this knife, I can still get up there. My fingers are not too fat. I can choke up and get a pretty good grip on the knife, and you'll notice that my thumb placement is not on the lock. It's up on the, you know, very generalized jimping here. This isn't too aggressive. So pretty subdued texture on top. Doesn't feel too aggressive on my hand, but there's definitely some bite there. I would say this is like the perfect level of jimping. For a guy like me who doesn't prefer jimping on especially fixed blades, this folding blade might win me over for folding blades, because this doesn't have any problem, and I get lots of power. If you don't like the idea of having your finger ahead, you know, and you're worried about guillotine or closing or something like that, I guess, you know, weird things happen, then you could just reach back here, and this would protect you. And when the knife closes, there's at least a little protection there from being guillotined. So if you need to have your hand further back like this, which is probably a good idea, then you can keep it behind this right here. And it feels relatively smooth. I don't feel a lot of really sharp hooks on the corners. That's one thing I've complained about with some FRN handle designs of other companies. It's the FRN on the inside sometimes is like razor sharp for a while, and you got to sand it down. Even G10 on certain models of knives I've had in the past can be relatively sharp. But the contouring and the transitions here from steel to handle and G10, this is very smooth. And it doesn't have any abrupt, sharp corners, which again, if you're going to have a thinner knife, you need to make sure that it's done well and it's executed well, and it has to have softer transitions. And this feels like it's got softer transitions. I wouldn't say that they perfectly rounded the interior. Okay, there's a next step right there, but that's going to cost you more money to round all the interior pieces as well as the exterior. I'm just saying that it's not sharp on the interior here on the handle. So I think the handle is done well. Obviously, it's got that kind of camo military look going on, and I like it. I thought this was really cool. The pocket clip, I could probably talk about that. The pocket clip manages to seem non-existent. When I put this in my hand, I don't feel that pocket clip digging in. And I guess it's just the location and the lack of rise that it has here. It doesn't stick out too much. With the pocket clip and the handle, I would say it's a good matchup. Mates up well for my hand. It doesn't cause excessive hot spots or fatigue or frustration with that. I actually like the pocket clip on this quite a bit. It grew on me. I knew that I liked this design through the lanyard hole here. That's cool. I was curious if this was going to be a little too long or if there's too much space in here, but actually what I'm finding is on most materials, loops, pockets, or even a jacket that I kind of stuff it on the pocket of the jacket, this works really well, and it's smooth enough in and out, but not so smooth that I feel like it's going to get grabbed by a tool or if I lift something up in it. Some knives, the pocket clip is so bent that the contour it gets picked up out of your pocket frequently, and if there's not enough tension against the G10 or titanium or whatever, if there's not enough tension, you could lose your pocket knife. And this is a really nice knife that I don't want to lose. I don't think that the rise here is excessive. The tension and the pressure is decent, and it fits against this G10 handle with enough friction in my pocket or my coat that I just don't think I'm going to lose this one. Additionally, that scoop there doesn't quite stick out so far that I'm worried about it grabbing onto things. I haven't had that experience so far. Here's how it stows away in the pocket. So there's a little more there than some knives. I wouldn't call it ultra deep carry. And Demco does have some other pocket clips and designs. This isn't the only one. But if you don't like flashy, they have all blacked out versions, that kind of thing. But sitting down, I still find it pretty easy to get a hold of with everything that I wear. And stows away pretty well. Pretty flat against the pocket. Doesn't seem to take up too much space. I can get my whole hand in there. And I have another item there. I have a little mini Olight flashlight. My backup. And I could have my phone in here or a front pocket wallet, something like that. And this would not interfere, in my opinion, at all. So fidgety. This is the fidgetiest knife I've ever had. And so this material, kind of like a work-based pants, outdoors pants, slips into those pretty well. And here's in a standing profile. So the depth of my pocket goes down to about here, and the knife sits about that far, but very, very thin. Again, it's not taking up excessive pocket space. It's got that stainless steel type, or tumble wash maybe, pocket clip, so it shines a little bit in the sun. It does stick out. If you want it totally to disappear, I think you would maybe look at some of the other models of the same knife with different blackout designs. But for me, I actually like it. I like how it looks. It's cool. And with a knife like this, I don't mind if it's a little flashy. I wouldn't call it deep carry, but I also don't want deep carry. I don't want to have to really try to get it. I usually want quick access to it, and I like having the little tab down here, okay? This tab that sticks out with the lanyard, if you wanted to put a lanyard on there, it'd be easy enough to throw one in. But as far as grabbing it, not difficult, okay? I can get a good purchase on it, and there's a little bit of grip right there on those torques. Nice design. I think it's aesthetically pretty cool, but yes, people will know you have it. It's not super low profile as far as pocket carry and clips go. You could get a blacked out version or an aftermarket clip if you really needed to, because the blade is worth it, in my opinion. Did I mention this isn't 3V? I love 3V. So when I strap this edge, I am not attempting to press really hard. I'm just attempting to get a consistent angle. And I'm not pushing hard as I pull it through. I'm actually really just kind of dragging. And I'm trying to match the edge. I'm not overcompensating because I don't want to convex this. I want to keep it about where that acuteness is for the edge already. Some people will, I think, change the edge. They might want to thin it out a little bit because of the type of knife that this is. I'm actually okay with it staying just a little bit stout. And I'm feeling for any edges that I don't like as I'm dragging through. And I already kind of know because I looked at it with a lens here that it's good to go. There's nothing there that would concern me or seem like it's toothy. I tend to put edges like these with 3V just slightly toothy rather than completely clean. But I've been able to run this one twice now after this drop, completely clean, no teeth at all, and it's razor sharp, and I like it quite a bit that way. All right, an apple is not the most entertaining thing to cut up, but I'm about to eat it. So let's go ahead and slice through this. And with the thickness, actually somewhat of a decent test. Let's go this way. Because it's not as thin, and some people have commented on that they would like it to be thinner. I am going to staunchly disagree. This is not a one-task knife. If it was a kitchen knife, I could agree with that. And I could say, yes, it would be cool if it was a little thinner. But being that this is an EDC blade, and I want it to do a lot of things, I want it to be robust, I want it to be strong. I mean, look how thin, transparent slices that I can pull out of this. And I did just hone this, and it is razor sharp. In fact, I think thinness-wise, we're right where we ought to be for a knife that I'm probably going to use hard and then also do more delicate or tasks that require some finesse. It doesn't blow the apple apart as if it were way too thick. And it's not as thin and slicey as a 1mm chef's knife, but I'm not having trouble with this at all. And the tip, let's go down to the tip and the belly. I mean, it works really nice. It's a really nice natural transition as far as a blade goes. I like the control, a little bit of jimping there. The way that the blade sits in the hand when you cut and pulling through and down to the point. Let's go down all the way to the point. Yeah, all of this blade is functional. I think it's probably the best folding knife that I have for EDC everything. Well, like I said in the intro, I've been a tried and true triad lock fan for many years. I mean, my Bush Ranger, my Ultimate Hunter, my 80-20, I could go on and on and on. I've had so many knife reviews with triad lock knives, and I like them all. I like what Andrew Demko has produced, and I also like innovation, and I have to keep myself a little bit open to changing and improving. I could probably just go forever on the triad locks and really enjoy them. But this lock does provide something new, and it's different. It's a little more flexible in some ways, and it's probably a little bit more EDC friendly. This blade is not weak. I think it can hold up to 90% of the things that I ever do with a folding knife with great confidence, and the other 10% are extreme uses for a folding blade anyways, and Demko has fixed blades, so that's what I should be looking at. I can highly recommend this blade. I personally like it a lot. Head over to demcoknives.com to see what else they have cooking. In fact, I have another review I'm going to produce very soon considering their shark cub, and that one is in 20 CV with the shark foot. I think that is going to be an awesome video you don't want to miss. Stick around.